Hello there, my name is Dave Thomas and I'm the owner of Motorcycle Inspection and Service. Welcome to this video, which is part 3 of No Spanners Maintenance. Today we're going to talk about the brakes. Obviously brakes are very important on your motorcycle, but not a lot of people realise how vulnerable they are. This is a typical brake pad, okay, and with this brake pad you can see the friction material here isn't very much. And in fact, when you're doing 70 miles an hour, the total amount of friction pad you have to brake with is around about 1 square centimetre. Now, one of the biggest problems with the brakes are that they're open to the elements. So in this country we've got a lot of rain and that enters into the brake caliper itself and causes it to seize. This caliper here is a typical brake caliper that has actually corroded past its best. And if you look carefully here, you can see that the rubber seals are actually hanging out of the piston and preventing the piston from returning. What that will cause is the actual brakes to bind on. And when you're riding along, you can't always notice that because of the power of the engine. Now, what that can cause in extreme circumstances is problems with your disc. This is a typical motorcycle disc or rotor. And on the face of it, it looks okay. But if we turn it over and have a look at careful examination, you can see periodically around the edge of the disc are in fact cracks. This is caused by a brake that's binding, and what's happened is the disc has overheated and it's caused it to crack, which obviously, apart from being an MOT failure, is very serious. One of the things that you can do to make sure that you don't have problems with your brakes is to make sure that you have it serviced regularly. Whenever I service a bike, whether it's a minor service or a major service, I always remove the brake pads, clean the pistons and make sure it's all free and check that the rubbers aren't in the same state as this one. Then what you need to do as well is be aware of yourself that if you've ridden out in the rain, because the pads that I showed you have actually got metal in, what they will do is react and they will cause a surface rust on the disc, and that will cause the actual friction material to stick to the disc. You may have been aware occasionally, if your bike's been stood up and you start to push it, that the brakes feel like they're binding on a little bit. And that's because the surface area has been contaminated with the rust and the brakes are sticking on. If you're going to lay your bike up for any period of time, or you've ridden in the rain and you haven't had a chance to dry your bike and you're putting it away, one of the tips you can use is use a normal mallet like this. This is just a normal rubber camping mallet. Won't do any harm at all. Look for this part here, the 2 circles, which is in fact the rear of the brake pistons, and just strike them a couple of times. What you're doing there is actually just pushing those pistons back in a little bit so that you're giving yourself a bit of airspace between the friction material and the disc. Now, most brakes need overhauling roughly about every 5 years. And what you need to do is rebuild the caliper very similar to this one and completely overhaul it with new seals, clean the pistons and all new pins. And obviously you would always refit new brake pads. Your disc brakes should last you somewhere around 20 to 25,000 miles, depending on your riding. However, if you allow your brakes to bind, they will actually fail prematurely, and discs can be a very expensive commodity. Thank you for watching.